In this video, we're going to take a look at graphing linear equations in a rectangular coordinate system. We'll start by looking at some vocabulary. The rectangular coordinate system is the system we use when we graph with an x and y axis. So you've probably done this before. The coordinate plane is created by two intersecting number lines, and all I mean by that is if you look at the x-axis, it looks just like number lines that we've used earlier in the semester. It's horizontal, it runs left to right, zero's in the center, negative numbers are left of 0, positive numbers are right of 0. The y-axis is also the same, it's just been rotated around so that positive numbers are up, negative numbers are down, and again 0 is in the center. The two number lines intersect where both are equal to 0, and that point is called the origin. And the origin is represented by an ordered pair that has both an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate of 0. And that brings us to this last bullet, and it's an important one because sometimes students get confused. They see two numbers in an ordered pair. They start trying to plot 2 points. Remember that each ordered pair contains both an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. The order is very important. The x-coordinate is always first, the y-coordinate is always second. Together, those two coordinates form an ordered pair, and that ordered pair only represents one point on the graph. So don't be confused by that. Okay, I've plotted some points here, and let's take a look at that. If we look at point A, it has an x-coordinate of 3, a y-coordinate of 2. If I think about how to plot that point, I would start from the origin, and my 3 tells me whether to move left or right because that's my x-coordinate. From the origin, I go to positive 3, but I don't put a point there. From there, I go up 2, and that's where I put my point. And I labeled that point A. Point B is a little different. You can see that point B lies on the y-axis, and the reason for that is because the x-coordinate is 0. So when we started at the origin and we think about whether to go left or right, we don't move left or right. The origin already has an x-coordinate of 0. So from there, we move down 1 unit to -1, and that's point B. The next point is point C, and it has an x-coordinate of -4, so I move left 4 units to -4. From that point, I go down 5 units to -5, and I put a point, and that point's point C. Finally, point D, I move left 2 units to -2. From there, I go up 3 units, and that's point D. So that's just a simple review of plotting points. Now let's talk about linear equations. A linear equation is any equation that when graphed forms a straight line on the coordinate plane. What do I mean by that? Well, this line represents the equation x plus y equals -3. And what that means is if I picked any ordered pair on this line, and let's pick one and just mark it so you can see it. If we pick a point here, right there in the center is a point, and if we think about what the coordinates of that point are, whoops, sorry about that. The x-coordinate looks like it would be, let's see, here's -5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the x-coordinate is -9. So I'm going to label this point up here. Its x-coordinate is -9. Its y-coordinate is +6. So this point in the center here has coordinates -9, +6. What that means is if I plug these values in, remember the first one is always x, the second one is y. That's a strange looking x, but you get the idea. -9 goes in for x in the equation, plus +6 for y, and I'm asking, is that really a solution? Is that equal to -3? And the answer is yes. And in reality, I already know that because this line is graphed, and any point on this line is a solution to this equation. So if I pick another one, let's pick a point on the y-axis. Right here, we know any point on the y-axis has an x-coordinate of 0, The y-coordinate would be -1, -2, -3. So we would be using the ordered pair, x is 0, y is -3. We plug that in, we get 0 plus -3 equals -3, and the answer is yes, it does. So any point on this line is a solution in this equation. When we graph an equation, we get a line that includes infinitely many solutions for that equation. The line continues on infinitely in both directions, so we really can't say we know what all the solutions are, but we can know that all the solutions would lie on that same line. Now let's talk about how to graph a linear equation. There are multiple methods used to graph a linear equation. The most efficient method depends on the format of the equation, and we'll talk more about that in the next couple videos. But today we're just going to graph a line by plotting points. And what I mean by that is you can pick any value for the x variable. Remember, there are infinitely many solutions. I can't pick a wrong value. Then I solve for the corresponding y value. Now I do have to solve that correctly so that I get the right y value that goes with the x value. You can choose any number to substitute for x. All of the solutions will lie on the same line. Let's take a look. If we look at y is equal to 2x plus 1, and I've said we're going to complete a table, and I picked -2, 0, and 2 as my x values that I want to substitute in. You could pick any value. I like these because they're near to the origin, so my graph doesn't have to be huge. If I pick -100, then I have to have a line that goes all the way out to -100 for my x-axis. So I pick values that are relatively small and relatively easy to work with. I substitute those in for the x in the equation, and I show you the work right here. This was 2x plus 1, so now it's 2 times -2, which is -4, plus 1 gives me -3. So the first ordered pair I have in my table, -2 is what I put in, -3 is the value I got. I do the same thing with 0. 2 times x would now be 2 times 0, plus 1 gives me 1. When I plug in 0, I get 1. Finally, when I plug in 2, I get 5 for y. So let's take a look again at plotting these points. Remember, my ordered pairs are coming right from that chart, that table of values. The first one, x is -2, so I go over to -2. Y is -3, so I go down 3 units, and I put a point. The second one, x is 0, y is 1. So I don't move left or right, I go up 1 unit, I put a point. Finally, when x is 2, so I go over to +2, y is 5, so I put a point. Alright, now we get ready to draw our line. When you draw your line, use a ruler, line up your points, draw a line through the points, put an arrow on both ends to show that it continues infinitely in both directions. And that's our graph for this equation. That's the line y equals 2x plus 1. Alright, our next graph is in a different form. The equation's in a different form. X plus y equals 4. And this was called standard form, where we have ax plus by equals c, where x and y, in this case, have coefficients of 1, so they don't have numbers in front of them. But that's called standard form. We still do everything the same way. I'm still going to use the same values. I plug in -2 for x, plus y equals 4. I solve it just like we've been solving equations. I've got a -2, so I have to add 2 to both sides. And I get y equals 6. When I plug in 0 for x, I get 0 plus y equals 4, so y equals 4. Last one, +2 plus y equals 4. I subtract 2 from both sides and get y equals 2. So I've done my chart with my ordered pairs. My first ordered pair is -2 and +6. So I start at the origin. Let me get my pen. I start at the origin and I go to -2 on the x-axis. From there, I go up to +6, and I put a point. Next point, x is 0, y is 4. So I go to the origin. I don't move left or right. This time I go up 4 units. And I put a point. Alright, last point, when x is positive 2, y is also positive 2. So I go right 2 and then I go up 2. And I put a point. Now I get my ruler ready to draw my line, and please use rulers and graph paper because it's much easier for you to be accurate and tell what you've got. Even with a ruler, sometimes you'll miss a point, just like I did. But that's our graph. So it's not too hard. When you're plotting points, you're just picking values to substitute in for x, solving for the y that goes with that, and then plotting those points and drawing the line. Alright, when you finish the homework that goes with this lesson, hopefully you'll have a good understanding of what the x-axis is, the y-axis, and the origin. You'll be able to plot a point correctly given an ordered pair, and you'll be able to graph a line by plotting points.